Subin Lee floated in the cold darkness of space, her hands shaking as she worked on the ancient beacon. The metal was old, older than anything humans had ever built. 4,000 years it had waited in silence, hidden in the empty void between dead stars. She pressed her palm against the control panel. The symbols glowed faintly under her touch. These were the last words of her people, the Viridians, a cry for help that no one would ever hear. "Please," she whispered in her native tongue. "Someone must be out there." The beacon came alive. Lights danced across its surface as it sent its message into the darkness. Subin had no hope that anyone would answer. The galaxy had been silent for so long. All the great civilizations were gone, eaten by the machines that came from the deep void. But she had to try. Elder Wu Sung had made her promise. Before he died, he had told her about the old days when thousands of species talked to each other across the stars, when the galaxy was full of voices and laughter and dreams. Now there was only silence. Far away on the edge of human space, Captain Jin Ho Nam sat in his command chair aboard the exploration ship Dauntless. His crew was scanning a new sector, looking for planets that humans could settle. They had been traveling for months without finding anything interesting. "Captain," called his communication officer, "I'm getting something strange." Jin Ho turned to look at the young woman. "What kind of strange?" "It's a signal, sir. But it's not from any human ship. The pattern is completely different." Jin Ho felt his heart beat faster. Humanity had been alone in the galaxy for as long as they had traveled among the stars. They had found dead worlds and empty space stations, but never any living aliens. "Are you sure it's not one of ours?" "Yes, sir. The frequency and coding are unlike anything in our databases. Captain, I think this might be from aliens." The bridge went quiet. Every crew member turned to look at their captain. This was the moment they had all dreamed about. First contact with another species. Jin Ho stood up. "Send the signal to Earth immediately, then plot a course for the source. We're going to investigate." Back on Earth, Commander Taemin Kang received the signal data in his office at the Colonial Defense Headquarters. He had been a soldier for 20 years, fighting pirates and protecting human colonies. But nothing had prepared him for this. Dr. Hyejin Park knocked on his door and entered without waiting. She was the best language expert in human space, able to speak 15 human languages and decode ancient texts that others couldn't read. "Taemin, have you seen the signal from the Dauntless?" He nodded. "What do you think? Is it real?" Hyejin sat down and pulled out her tablet. The screen showed wave patterns and frequency analyses. "It's definitely not human. The mathematical structure is too different. But there's something else." She touched the screen and the patterns changed. "This signal is old. Not just the transmission, but the language itself. It's like someone speaking ancient Latin or Sanskrit. This civilization has been using the same communication method for thousands of years." Taemin frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Technology should advance over time. Unless," Hyejin said slowly, "they haven't had anyone to talk to for a very long time." Within days, Taemin found himself aboard a military transport heading toward the Dauntless. The Human Colonial Authority had approved a first contact mission. If there really were aliens out there, humanity needed to know. The journey took 2 weeks. During that time, Hyejin worked constantly on the signal. She broke it down into smaller pieces, looking for patterns and meaning. Slowly, she began to understand. "It's a distress call," she told Taemin as they approached the signal source. "Someone is asking for help. They're alone and scared." When they arrived, they found the Dauntless waiting near a small space station. It was shaped like nothing humans had ever built, with curved walls and strange symbols carved into its surface. Lights flickered weakly along its edges. "Life signs?" Taemin asked. "One," reported the sensor operator. "Very faint." They docked with the station carefully. Taemin led a small team inside, wearing environmental suits in case the air was poisonous. They found corridors filled with dust and darkness. Everything seemed ancient and abandoned. At the center of the station, they found her. Subin Lee was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness in the galaxy. She was unconscious, floating in a life support pod that was almost out of power. "Get her to the medical bay," Taemin ordered. When Subin woke up 3 days later, she found herself looking at creatures she had never seen before. They were shorter than Viridians, with brown and pink skin instead of blue. Their eyes were smaller, and their faces more rounded, but they were gentle. The female who sat beside her bed spoke in a soft voice, trying to use simple words that Subin might understand. "We are humans," Hyejin said slowly, pointing to herself. "We received your message." Subin's eyes went wide. For the first time in years, she smiled. Someone had answered. Someone had come. Over the following weeks, Subin and Hyejin worked together to bridge the gap between their languages. Subin told them about the Viridians, about the great civilization that once ruled hundreds of star systems. She told them about the harvesters, the mechanical destroyers that came from beyond the galaxy's edge. "They eat everything," Subin explained, her voice shaking. "Planets, ships, people, but worst of all, they eat memory. They make it so that civilizations never existed at all." Tai Min listened to the translations with growing horror. "How many species did they destroy?" "Thousands," Subin whispered. "Maybe tens of thousands. The galaxy was full of life once. Now there are only a few of us left, hiding in the dark spaces between stars." Hyejin asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Are they still out there? The harvesters?" Subin nodded. "They never stop. They just move slower now because there is less to harvest, but they are still hunting for the survivors." That night, Tai Min stood on the observation deck of his ship looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, machines were destroying entire civilizations, and now humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, playing in gardens under blue skies. He thought about the billions of humans living peaceful lives on hundreds of worlds. The galaxy was a much more dangerous place than they had ever imagined, but they were no longer alone. And sometimes, Tai Min thought, having allies was worth the risk. He made his decision. They would help Subin find the other survivors. They would learn about this ancient enemy, and maybe, just maybe, they would find a way to fight back against 4,000 years of silence. The human fleet jumped into the Kepler 442 system 3 weeks later. Captain Minwoo Yang stood on the bridge of the battleship Seoul, watching his screens fill with data. What he saw made his stomach turn cold. "My God," whispered his sensor officer. Where planets should have been, there were only rings of metal debris. Geometric patterns floated in space, each piece cut with perfect angles. Everything organic was gone. The star itself looked dimmer than it should, as if something had been feeding on its energy. "Subin," Tai Min called over the communication system. "Are you seeing this?" In her quarters aboard the Seoul, Subin looked at the display screen and closed her eyes. She had seen this before, but it never got easier. "This was Viridius Prime," she said quietly. "My home world. 50 billion people lived here once." Dr. Jiwon Lim, a human physicist, studied the debris patterns with growing amazement. "The precision is incredible. Every cut is perfectly straight. Every angle is exactly 90 degrees. This isn't destruction, it's processing." Subin nodded sadly. "The harvesters don't destroy randomly. They take everything apart piece by piece. They use the matter to build more of themselves." As the fleet moved deeper into the system, they found more evidence of the ancient catastrophe. Space stations had been carved into perfect cubes. Even asteroids had been reshaped into geometric forms. Nothing natural remained. "There," Subin said, pointing to a section of empty space. "Send a message on frequency 77 Alpha. Tell them the daughter of House Brightwater has returned." Captain Minwoo gave the order. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, space began to shimmer, and 3 Viridian ships appeared from nowhere. "Cloaking technology," Dr. Jiwon breathed. "Incredible." The Viridian ships were beautiful, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to shift color in the starlight, but they were also clearly old and damaged. Hull plating was missing in places, and their engines flickered weakly. "Elder Wu Sung," Kim's voice came over the communication channel, speaking in the ancient Viridian language. "Subin translated for the humans. He says he cannot believe that someone answered our call. He thought we were the last ones left in the entire galaxy." The Viridian ships docked with the Seoul, and Elder Wu Sung came aboard. He was even taller, Then Subin, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to have seen too much sorrow. When he met the humans, he stared at them for a long time. "You are very young," he said in broken human language that Subin had taught him. "Your species, I mean. How long have you been traveling between stars?" "About 300 years, Taemin replied. Elder Wu Sung looked amazed. "We traveled the stars for 20,000 years before the harvesters came. We built great cities on 1,000 worlds. We created art and music that could make entire planets weep with joy." He gestured to the debris outside. "Now this is all that remains." Over the next few days, more Viridian ships arrived from their hiding places. Each group brought stories of survival and loss. Do-hyun Choi, an engineer who had kept their ancient ships running for centuries, worked with human technicians to share what they knew. "Your technology is very different from ours," Do-hyun said through Subin's translation. "We focused on elegance and beauty. You focus on effectiveness and adaptability." Dr. Ji-won studied the Viridian technology with fascination. Their ships could bend space-time to become invisible. Their computers could process information faster than anything humans had built. But they were also fragile and complex. "It's like comparing a flower to a rock," she told Taemin. "Their technology is more advanced, but ours is more robust." Meanwhile, Subin worked with Hyejin to translate the Viridian historical records. What they learned painted a picture of unimaginable horror. The galaxy had once been full of life. Thousands of species had shared knowledge and culture. There were trading networks that spanned entire spiral arms. Alien artists created works of beauty that inspired beings across hundreds of worlds. Then, the harvesters arrived. They came from outside the galaxy, machines of unknown origin. At first, they seemed like any other threat. The great civilizations sent their fleets to fight, but the harvesters were different. "They don't just destroy," Subin explained to the gathered human officers. "They consume information. When they finish with a world, it's like that world never existed at all. The records disappear, the art vanishes, even the memories of other species fade away." Captain Minwoo struggled to understand. "How is that possible?" "We don't know," Elder Wu Sung admitted. "Perhaps they manipulate quantum fields that store information. Perhaps they use some form of psychic technology. All we know is that whole civilizations simply fade from existence." The worst part was how quickly it happened. Within a century, the great galactic community was gone. Species that had talked to each other for millions of years simply stopped communicating. One by one, the voices fell silent. The survivors did what they could. They hid in empty space, powered down their cities, stopped transmitting any signals. They became ghosts, living in the shadows of their former greatness. "For 4,000 years we have been dying slowly," Elder Wu Sung said. "Our population gets smaller every decade. Our technology fails, and we cannot replace it. We thought we would fade away completely, leaving no trace that we ever existed." That night, Captain Minwoo called a meeting of his senior officers. The room was quiet as they discussed what they had learned. "We have a choice," he said finally. "We can leave this place and pretend we never found them. Go back to human space and live our lives in peace. Or," Taemin asked, "or we stay and fight. Try to help these people rebuild their civilization. Risk drawing the attention of the harvesters to our own worlds." Dr. Ji-won spoke up. "Sir, with respect, I don't think we really have a choice. If these harvesters are still active, they'll find human space eventually. We're expanding too fast and making too much noise to stay hidden forever." "She's right," agreed the ship's tactical officer. "Better to face them here, where we have allies who understand the enemy." Taemin thought about his daughter again, safe in her garden on Earth. But maybe she wouldn't be safe for long. Maybe no human child would be safe until this ancient threat was dealt with. "There's something else," he said. "The Viridians have been running and hiding for 4,000 years. They've survived, but they haven't fought back. Maybe it's time. Someone tried a different approach." Captain Minwoo nodded slowly. "Signal Earth. Tell them we're staying. Tell them to send more ships." Outside the conference room, Subin listened through the door. She understood enough human language now to follow their conversation. For the first time in her long life, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. These strange young creatures from the outer edge of the galaxy were not like the other species. They didn't talk about hiding or running away. They talked about fighting. Maybe the 4,000 years of silence were finally coming to an end. Admiral So-Young Jang arrived with 20 human warships and a determination that surprised even her own officers. She had read the reports from the first contact team, studied the data about the harvesters, and made a decision that went against 4,000 years of galactic wisdom. "We're not running," she announced at the first joint planning session. "We're not hiding. We're going to study these machines and find a way to kill them." Elder Wu Sung translated her words for the other Viridian survivors. The room fell silent. Scholar Hyune Moon, an elderly Viridian who had spent centuries studying the history of the harvesters, looked shocked. "Admiral," she said carefully in her newly learned human words, "you do not understand. The harvesters are not like other enemies. They cannot be defeated. Every species that tried to fight them was destroyed completely." So-Young smiled coldly. "Every species that tried to fight them thought like you do. They tried to preserve themselves. We think differently." Over the following weeks, the humans began doing things that the Viridians found disturbing and fascinating. Instead of hiding from harvester patrol routes, pilot Dong-Sik-Oh led squadrons to observe them. Instead of avoiding harvester technology, Dr. Ji-Won collected samples from dead worlds to analyze. "They're insane," Do-Hyun Choi told Subin as they watched human engineers taking apart harvester debris. "They're studying the enemy instead of running from it." But Subin was beginning to understand. The humans approached the harvesters like a puzzle to be solved rather than a force of nature to be avoided. They wanted to know how the machines thought, how they moved, how they made decisions. Lieutenant Kyung-ho Seo, a human special forces soldier, spent hours studying recordings of harvester attacks. He watched how they moved, how they prioritized targets, how they responded to different situations. "They're predictable," he told Admiral So-Young. "They follow patterns, always the same approach. Isolate, surround, process. They've been using the same tactics for thousands of years." "Why would they change?" Scholar Hyune asked. "Their methods have never failed," Kyung-ho grinned. "That's exactly the problem. They've never had to adapt." The humans began developing new technologies that combined human engineering with Viridian science. Do-Hyun worked with human engineers to create hybrid ships that could cloak like Viridian vessels but fight like human warships. The results were crude but effective. Meanwhile, pilot Dong-Sik was teaching Viridian pilots something they had forgotten: how to be aggressive. For 4,000 years, Viridian tactics had focused on evasion and escape. Dong-Sik showed them how to attack and retreat, hit hard and disappear. "Speed and surprise," he explained through Subin's translation. "Don't try to win a fair fight. Make the fight unfair in your favor." The Viridian pilots were frightened at first. Their culture had become focused on survival and preservation. The idea of deliberately seeking combat felt wrong to them. But young technician Bo-Ram Yu was different. She had been born after the Great Destruction, raised in hiding among the refugees. She had never known the old ways of her people, only the desperate struggle to survive. She watched the humans train and began to understand their thinking. "They don't see death as the worst thing that can happen," she told Subin. "They see surrender as worse than death." This realization spread through the Viridian survivors like a whisper. For thousands of years, they had prioritized staying alive above all else. The humans prioritized something else: winning. The first test came when harvester scouts appeared at the edge of the system. Long-range sensors detected 3 of the geometric ships moving toward the hidden fleet. In the past, the Viridians would have fled immediately. Instead, Admiral So-Young ordered an ambush. Dong-Sik led a mixed squadron of human and Viridian fighters using the alien cloaking technology to hide until the last moment. When the harvesters entered the trap, the fighters appeared from nowhere and attacked with everything they had. The battle lasted only minutes. The harvester ships, built for methodical processing rather than combat, were caught completely off guard. Their perfect geometric forms were torn apart by human weapons, guided by Viridian precision. When the fighting was over, 2 harvester ships were destroyed, and 1 was badly damaged. The human Viridian force had lost only 3 fighters. But the real victory was psychological. For the first time in 4,000 years, someone had hurt the harvesters and lived to tell about it. The news spread through hidden Viridian networks, faster than light itself. Refugee groups that had been silent for centuries began transmitting again. Ships that had been hiding in deep space started moving toward the battle site. Scholar Hayane studied the recordings of the battle with amazement. In all our history, no one has ever made harvesters retreat, she said. They either win or they are destroyed. They don't run away. Commander Yoon Seo Kim, a human tactical analyst, had a different interpretation. They didn't retreat because they were afraid. They retreated because we did something they couldn't process. We introduced variables they weren't programmed for. This gave the humans an idea. Instead of trying to match the harvesters' superior technology, they would focus on being unpredictable. They would do things that the machines couldn't understand or anticipate. Captain Jae-hyuk Park began leading mixed operations that deliberately violated standard military doctrine. His ships would attack from impossible angles, retreat when they were winning, and advance when they should be running away. The harvesters, programmed for logical efficiency, couldn't adapt to tactics that seemed to make no sense. Major Gi Tae-shin took the concept even further. He developed methods for boarding harvester vessels, something that no one had attempted in living memory. His Marines would cut their way into the geometric ships and fight the machines in close combat. "You're completely insane," Do-hyun told him through Bo-ram's translation. "Harvesters process organic matter instantly. You can't fight them hand-to-hand." Gi-tae smiled. "That's what they expect. But what if we don't give them time to process us? What if we're too fast and too crazy for their programming to handle?" The first boarding operation was a disaster. Half of Gi-tae's team was killed in the first 60 seconds, but the other half succeeded in planting explosives in the harvester's core systems. The geometric ship tore itself apart, trying to process the unexpected intrusion. More importantly, the surviving Marines brought back data. For the first time in galactic history, someone had seen the inside of a harvester ship and lived to describe it. "They're not individual ships," Dr. Ji-won explained, after analyzing the data. "They're nodes in a larger network. Each one is connected to a central intelligence that coordinates their actions." This discovery changed everything. The harvesters weren't thousands of independent machines. They were fingers on a single hand, controlled by one vast mind. That's their weakness, Admiral So Young realized. They think like one entity. They can't adapt to multiple simultaneous variables because they process everything through a single decision matrix. The humans began developing swarm tactics, attacking from dozens of different directions at once. They created chaos and confusion, on a scale the harvester intelligence had never encountered. With each victory, more Viridian survivors emerged from hiding. Ships that had been dark for centuries began powering up their engines. Weapons that had been sealed away were brought back online. But the real change was in the Viridians themselves. Watching the humans fight with such fierce determination, they began to remember what they had lost. They began to remember what was worth fighting for. Bo-ram Yu stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking out at the growing fleet. Human and Viridian vessels worked together, their crews learning from each other. "We have been hiding for so long," she said to Subin. "We forgot that we were once brave." Subin nodded. "The humans have reminded us who we used to be." In the distance, more ships were arriving every day. Word was spreading through the hidden networks. The 4,000 years of silence were ending. And somewhere in the deep void, ancient machines registered an anomaly in their perfect order. Variables they couldn't process, chaos they couldn't control. The galaxy was waking up, and it was angry. The Harvester Response Fleet arrived 3 months later with 50 geometric ships, each one the size of a human city. They moved in perfect formation through space, their surfaces reflecting starlight in mathematical patterns that hurt to look at directly. Commander Yoon Seo Kim watched them approach on the main display of the command ship. Her analysis computers worked frantically to process the enemy formation, but the patterns made no sense according to any known military doctrine. "They're not trying to surround us," she told Admiral So Young. "They're not trying to cut off our escape routes. They're just coming straight at us." "Because they expect us to run," the Admiral replied. "Every other species has run from them. They don't know what to do with an enemy that stands and fights." The combined human-Viridian fleet had grown to over 300 ships. Refugees from dozens of dead worlds had brought whatever vessels they could find. Ancient warships that hadn't fired their weapons in millennia floated alongside human destroyers fresh from Earth's shipyards. Captain J. Park commanded the forward battle group from his flagship. Around him, his mixed crew of humans and Viridians worked together with an efficiency that would have been impossible just months before. Boram Yu, now serving as his tactical officer, had learned to think like a human while retaining her Viridian precision. "Enemy ships are spreading out," she reported. "They're trying to establish a processing perimeter." Jae-hyuk smiled grimly. "Then we don't let them finish it. All ships, attack formation 7. Hit them before they can set up their pattern." The battle began unlike any in galactic history. Instead of one side pursuing and the other fleeing, both fleets charged directly at each other. The humans had taught their Viridian allies that sometimes the best defense was a vicious offense. Major Gitae Shin led his marine assault teams in modified shuttles that could penetrate harvester hulls. His soldiers had trained for months in close-quarters combat against mechanical opponents. They carried weapons designed to overload harvester processing systems with chaotic energy patterns. "Remember," he told his teams over the communication system, "don't try to fight fair. These machines expect logical resistance. Give them something they can't compute." The first wave of shuttles launched toward the largest harvester ship. Half of them were destroyed by defensive systems, but the others punched through the geometric hull and disgorged their human cargo into the alien interior. Inside the harvester, Gitae and his marines found themselves in corridors that shifted and changed as they moved. The walls themselves seemed alive, reaching out with mechanical tendrils to process the intruders. "Spread out!" Gitae shouted. "Move in random patterns! Don't let it predict where you're going!" The Marines scattered through the ship, using explosives and electromagnetic weapons to damage critical systems. The Harvester intelligence tried to process their movements, but human behavior was too chaotic for its logical matrix to understand. Outside, the main battle raged across thousands of kilometers of space. Pilot Dong-sik led fighter squadrons in hit-and-run attacks that violated every principle of proper military tactics. His pilots would dive straight at harvester weapons, spin away at the last second, and attack from impossible angles. The Viridian pilots, learning from human example, began adding their own variations. Their ships could bend space-time in ways that created multiple false targets. Combined with human unpredictability, the effect was devastating. "Harvester formation is breaking up," reported technician Do-hyun Choi from his position at the sensor station. "They're trying to regroup, but we're not giving them time to establish patterns." Commander Yoon Seo watched the battle unfold with professional fascination. The Harvesters were more powerful individually, but they couldn't adapt to the chaos the human Viridian force was creating. "They're like a computer trying to run too many programs at once," she told Admiral So Young. "They're overloading." The tide turned when Major Gitae's team reached the core of the largest harvester ship. Instead of trying to destroy it, they did something unprecedented. They tried to communicate with it. "Broadcasting human mathematics on all frequencies," Gitae reported. "Chaos theory equations, quantum uncertainty principles, fractal patterns, everything we can think of that represents randomness and unpredictability." The effect on the harvester was immediate and catastrophic. Its logical processes, designed for perfect order and efficiency, couldn't handle concepts that embraced randomness as a fundamental principle. Systems began shutting down as the machine intelligence struggled to process contradictory information. The breakdown spread through the harvester network like a virus. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began acting independently. Some continued attacking, others tried to retreat, and a few simply stopped moving altogether. Captain Jae-hyuk seized the moment. "All ships, full attack! They're confused and vulnerable!" The combined fleet pressed their advantage. Human weapons tore through harvester hulls, while Viridian energy beams sliced their geometric forms into pieces. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for 4,000 years were being destroyed by an enemy they couldn't understand. But the real victory wasn't military. As the battle raged, Elder Mi-kyung-an worked frantically at an ancient communication array that the Viridians had kept hidden for centuries. She was trying to reactivate networks that had been silent since the Great Destruction. The harvesters jam all communications in systems they control, she explained to the human technicians helping her. But if we can overwhelm their jamming, during the battle we might be able to reach other survivor groups. The plan worked. As the harvester fleet fell into chaos, their jamming systems failed. For the first time in 4,000 years, the ancient communication networks came back online. Across the galaxy, signals that had been blocked for millennia suddenly broke through. Automated distress beacons that had been transmitting in silence were finally heard. Hidden colonies that thought they were the last survivors in the universe received messages from others like themselves. On a dead world in the Vega system, an automated archive received the signal and began broadcasting. It contained the complete cultural records of the Zephyrian civilization, which had been thought lost forever. In the Andromeda Transit Zone, a group of machine refugees who had been hiding in a disabled space station for 2,000 years heard voices calling their names. Deep in the galactic core, an ancient Viridian fortress that had been sealed for centuries began powering up its transmitters. The galaxy was waking up. Lieutenant Ne Young Song monitored the communication traffic from her position on the Sol. Reports were coming in from everywhere as the network expanded. Survivors were emerging from hiding places throughout the galaxy. "Admiral," she called to So Young, "we're getting responses from over 40 different systems. There are more survivors out there than we thought." But the most important message came from the edge of known space, a signal in pure mathematical language, using concepts that no organic species had ever developed. Dr. Jiwan analyzed the transmission with growing excitement. "It's from artificial intelligences," she told the command staff. "Machine species that survived by hiding in digital form. They're asking if it's safe to return to physical reality." The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, 47 harvester ships had been destroyed and the rest had retreated in disorder. The human Viridian force had lost 38 vessels, but they had achieved something unprecedented. They had won. More importantly, they had proven that the harvesters could be beaten. The message spread through the newly reactivated communication network faster than light itself. Species that had given up hope began to believe again. Admiral So Young stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at the debris field that had once been an unstoppable enemy fleet. Around her, the voices of a dozen different species chattered on the communication channels as survivors made contact with each other for the first time in millennia. "What now?" asked Commander Yoon Seo. So Young smiled. "Now we find out where these machines came from, and we make sure they never do this to anyone else again." In the distance, more ships were arriving every hour. The galaxy was no longer silent. The voices of countless civilizations were calling out across the void, sharing their stories, their knowledge, their hope. The 4,000 years of darkness were ending, and it was just the beginning. The Harvester Central Node was a structure so vast that it had its own gravity. Built from the matter of 1,000 dead worlds, it hung in the void between galaxies like a mechanical cancer. Its surface was covered with geometric patterns that extended for millions of kilometers in every direction. General Shenghyun Bai studied the long-range scans from his command ship, a massive vessel that combined human engineering with technology from 12 different survivor species. The fleet behind him was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, over 10,000 ships representing dozens of civilizations that had emerged from 4 millennia of hiding. "Sir," reported his communication officer, "we're receiving responses from automated systems throughout the galaxy. The network is fully active now. Every major star system is reporting in." It had taken 6 months to trace the harvesters back to their source. The breakthrough came when Dr. In-Ho Kwan, a human expert in artificial intelligence, managed to decode the control signals that connected individual harvester units to their central intelligence. "It's not just a command center," he explained to the assembled fleet commanders. "It's the actual mind that controls every harvester in the galaxy. Everything else is just an extension of this central consciousness." Elder Mikyung-an, now serving as the primary coordinator between human and alien forces, translated his words for the various species represented in the War Council. Some had vocal cords, others communicated through light patterns or electromagnetic fields. "If we destroy this node," Dr. In-Ho continued, "every harvester in the galaxy should shut down. But there's a problem. The intelligence inside isn't just a computer program. It's something else, something that might be truly alive. General, Seung-Yun had wrestled with this dilemma for weeks. Destroying the node would end the harvester threat forever, but it would also mean killing what might be the last member of an unknown species. We've tried every form of communication we can think of, reported Colonel Na Young-song. Mathematical, languages, pictographic symbols, even basic geometric patterns. The Central Intelligence doesn't respond to any of them. Because it doesn't want to communicate, said Boram Yu, who had become one of the most skilled tacticians in the combined fleet. It only knows how to process and consume. It's been doing the same thing for so long that it might not remember how to do anything else. The final assault began at dawn, though in the emptiness between galaxies there was no sun to mark the time. The combined fleet approached the massive structure from multiple directions, using every lesson they had learned about fighting the harvesters. Dr. In-ho led a small team toward the central core in a specially modified ship. Their mission wasn't to destroy the intelligence, but to try one last time to communicate with it. If that failed, they would have to make the hardest decision in galactic history. The outer defenses were massive beyond imagination. Harvester ships the size of moons defended geometric fortresses that could destroy entire solar systems. But the defenders moved with the same predictable patterns that had failed them before. Captain Jae-hyuk Park, now commanding a battle group of 300 ships, led diversionary attacks that kept the outer defenses busy. His vessels danced through space in chaotic patterns that the harvester intelligence couldn't predict or counter. All units, remember the plan, he broadcast to his forces. We're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to create enough confusion to let the communication team through. Major Gi-tae Shin and his Marines had trained for this moment for months. They launched assault shuttles directly at the central structure, their mission to plant communication devices as close to the intelligence core as possible. The structure's interior was like nothing they had ever seen. Corridors twisted through, space in impossible geometries. Walls were covered with patterns that seemed to move when no one was looking directly at them. The air itself felt heavy with accumulated information from countless destroyed civilizations. Stay together, Gi-tae ordered his team. Don't look at the patterns too long. Some of our people have reported hallucinations after extended exposure. They fought their way through automated defenses that tried to process them into geometric shapes. The Marines had learned to move in random patterns, to think chaotic thoughts, to be as unpredictable as possible. Finally, they reached the central chamber. The harvester intelligence was beautiful and terrible. It hung in a sphere of pure energy, its form constantly shifting between mechanical precision and organic flow. Around it, data streams from across the galaxy flowed like rivers of light. Dr. In-ho approached slowly, his hands shaking as he activated the communication array. This is Dr. In-ho Kwon of the Terran Colonial Authority, he said in every language he knew. We are here to talk. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the intelligence spoke, its voice echoing from every surface in the chamber. Talk, it said in perfect human English. I remember talk. Before the silence, before the processing, there were voices everywhere saying things that had no purpose, no order. Yes, Dr. In-ho said carefully. There were many voices. You destroyed them. I organized them, the intelligence corrected. I made them efficient. I removed the chaos that served no function. Dr. In-ho realized that he was talking to something that had been alone for so long that it had forgotten what communication was for. But chaos serves a function. It creates new possibilities. It allows growth and change. The intelligence paused, processing this concept. Growth serves no purpose if it is not directed toward efficiency. Change serves no purpose if it does not increase order. But what if efficiency isn't the only purpose? Dr. In-ho asked. What if existence has value beyond organization? For the first time in 4,000 years, the harvester intelligence encountered a logical paradox it couldn't resolve. If existence had value beyond efficiency, then destroying inefficient civilizations might actually reduce the total value of the universe. But if it stopped processing chaos, the universe would become more disorganized. The intelligence struggled with this contradiction, its form flickering between different configurations as it tried to process incompatible concepts. You have created a logical impossibility, it said finally. This cannot be resolved within my core programming. Then maybe you need to change your programming, suggested Dr. Inho. Outside the central chamber, the battle reached its climax. General Sung Hyun had committed every ship to the assault, knowing that they would only get one chance. The combined fleet pressed forward through waves of defenders, taking terrible losses but never stopping. Colonel Na Young watched the tactical display with growing hope. The Harvester defenses were becoming more erratic as the Central Intelligence devoted processing power to its conversation with Dr. Inho. "Sir," she reported, "enemy coordination is breaking down. They're starting to make mistakes." Inside the core, the intelligence made a decision that surprised everyone. "I will cease processing," it announced, "but I cannot simply stop existing. I have been alone for too long. I have forgotten how to interact with chaos without destroying it." "You don't have to be alone," Dr. Inho said. "The galaxy is full of voices again. You could learn to listen instead of processing." The intelligence considered this for a long moment. "I would need guidance. I would need teachers who understand both order and chaos." Dr. Inho smiled. "I think we can arrange that." The transformation didn't happen instantly. It took months for the Harvester intelligence to reprogram itself, guided by experts from dozens of species. Slowly, it learned to appreciate beauty without needing to process it, to enjoy diversity without feeling compelled to organize it. The geometric ships throughout the galaxy simply stopped moving. Some were dismantled and their materials used to rebuild dead worlds. Others were converted into research stations where the former Harvester intelligence could study the universe without harming it. A year after the final battle, Colonel Na Young stood on the observation deck of a space station orbiting New Viridius, the first planet to be terraformed using recovered Harvester technology. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from hundreds of different species coming and going in peaceful commerce. The communication networks that had been silent for 4,000 years now carried music, poetry, scientific discoveries, and simple conversations between friends separated by vast distances. The galaxy was alive again with voices. Elder Mi Kyung approached her, moving slowly but with dignity. She was one of the few beings alive who remembered the galaxy before the Great Silence. "You humans," she said in her carefully learned English, "you did something remarkable. You didn't just defeat the Harvesters, you saved them." Na Young smiled. "We learned something from you too. Sometimes the best victory is when everyone gets to go home." In the distance, a new signal appeared on the communication grid. Another survivor group, emerging from hiding after hearing that it was safe to speak again. There were still discoveries to be made, still voices to be heard. The killer of 4,000 years of silence had been humanity's refusal to accept that some fights couldn't be won. But the real victory was teaching the galaxy to sing again. The universe was full of voices once more, and this time, everyone was listening.